Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama. Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna. All right. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Paradhare Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Paradhare Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachare Yamunatira Vanachare Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Paradhare Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Paradhare Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachare Yamunatira Vanachare Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada. Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Vishnupad Paramahans Parivajak Charis Srimad. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. ISKCON's founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki. Shri Shri Radha Radhanath Ki. Shri Giri Govardhan Ki. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki. Sankirtan Yagya Ki. Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 9. Dhruva Maharaj returns home, and we will begin with verse 38, which has no purport. Then we'll go on to 39 and 40, which also have no purport. And then we'll read verse 41, which has a purport. And I assume 41 is on the sheets. Yes? 40. 41. Okay. 41. 38, 39, 40 are not there, yeah? What? They are. I didn't quite catch that. Oh, it's there. Just see. Amazing. Well, devotees, pardon me for being a bit of a rebel, but I'll just read 38, 39, and 40, and we will do 41. Okay, so here we go. Verse 38. Shraddhaya vakyam devarshir, harshavegena darshita, vartahatur ati prito, haram pradan mahadanam. Translation. Although he could not believe the words of the messenger, he had full faith in the word of the great sage Narada. So he is King Uttanapad, who's the father of Dhruva, who, as the chapter title says, Dhruva is returning home. So a messenger came and said, Dhruva's coming, he's just now coming, he'll be here shortly. So Uttanapad, the father, couldn't believe that. How could it be true? How could it be true? As a little boy, he just went off to the forest and he disappeared. How could he still be alive? How could he be coming? But Narada had said the same thing before. Early Narada had said, come. So the king believed Narada, but the messenger, he wasn't so sure. Anyway, yes, continuing the translation of verse 38 then. Well, anyway, I'll go back to the beginning. Although he could not believe the words of the messenger, he had full faith in the word of the great sage Narada. Thus, he was greatly overwhelmed by the news, and he immediately gave the messenger a highly valuable necklace in great satisfaction. So verses 39 and 40, I'll just read. Tadashvam ratam aruhya, kartasvara parishkritam, brahmanai kulavridais cha, paryasto matya bandhubi, shanka dundubi nadena, brahmagoshena venubi, nishchakrama puraturnam, atmaja bhikshanot sukha. And the translation, then King Uttanapad, being very eager to see the face of his lost son, mounted a chariot drawn by excellent horses and bedecked with golden filigree, taking with him many learned Brahmins, all the elderly personalities of his family, his officers, his ministers, and his immediate friends. He immediately left the city. As he proceeded in this parade, there were auspicious sounds of conch shells, kettle drums, flutes, and the chanting of Vedic mantras to indicate all good fortune. So they're all coming out of the city to meet Dhruva, who's returning from some time in the forest. Right, okay, verse 41. And we'll do this responsively. Sunite Suruchesh Chasya Mahishya Rukma Boshite Ahruya Shibikam Sardham Uttamena Bijagmato Suniti Suruchis Chasya Mahishya Rukma Bhushite Ahruya Shibikam Sardam Uttamena bijagmato. Suniti suruchischasya. Mahishya rukma bhushite. Aruya shibikam saratam. Uttamena bijagmato. Suniti suruchischasya. Mahishya rukma bhushite. Aruya shibikam sardam. Uttamena bijagmato. Ladies, Suniti, Queen Suniti, Suruchi, Queen Suruchi, Cha, also, Asya, of the king, Mahishya, queens, Rukmabhushite, being decorated with golden ornaments, Aruhya, getting on, Shibikam, a palanquin, Sardham, along with Uttamena, the king's other son, Uttama, Abhijagmato, all proceeded along. Translation: both the queens of King Uttanapad, namely Suniti and Suruchi, along with his other son, Uttama, appeared in the procession. The queens were seated on a palanquin. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. After the departure of Dhruva Maharaj from the palace, the king was very afflicted, but by the kind words of Saint Narada, he was partially satisfied. He could understand the great fortune of his wife, Suniti, and the great misfortune of Queen Suruchi. For these facts were certainly very open in the palace. But still, when the news reached the palace that Dhruva Maharaj was returning, his mother, Suniti, out of her great compassion, and due to being the mother of a great Vaishnav, did not hesitate to take the other wife, Suruchi, and her son, Uttama, on the same palanquin. That was the greatness of Queen Suniti, the mother of the great Vaishnav, Dhruva Maharaj. So, okay. I'll just read this verse again, 41. Suniti suruchis chasya mahishyo rukamabushite aruhya shibikam sardam utame na bijagmatu. Both the queens of King Uttanapad, namely Suniti and Suruchi, along with his other son Uttama, appeared in the procession. The queens were seated on a palanquin. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastuchade Shatarane Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpatrudabhyascha kripa sindubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, it's an interesting part of a very interesting and important story narration from Srimad Bhagavatam. It's well known, I assume you're all aware, or many of you are aware, the story. But I'll just touch on the background momentarily. Dhruva Maharaj was the son of Suniti, and the father was the king, Uttanapad. But Uttanapad, as mentioned here, he had two wives, Suniti's one, the other one Suruchi, and the other son, Uttama, mentioned here in the verse, is the son of Suruchi. So there are these two brothers by each of the two different wives, and the father in both cases is Uttanapad. But somehow or other, Suruchi had endeared herself somewhat more to Uttanapad, the king. And Suniti was not so much in favor. I mean, it wasn't bad, but not so much in favor. And therefore the son of Suruchi, because she was the favorite and she was in a position to push her son forward more. So Uttama, Dhruva Maharaj's brother, was the favorite son. And what happened was there was an incident in which Uttama was on the lap of Uttanapad, And Dhruva wanted to also climb on the lap of Uttanapad, but Uttanapad, the king, the father, pushed him off. Yeah, like deliberately removed him and kept Uttama there. And this, well, Kshatriyas have a number of specific characteristics, qualities. They're very bold, they're very brave, and so on like that. But they're also prone to be somewhat proud. And Dhruva, even though at the time he was only 5, but he had that pride. So when he got just, discarded in this embarrassing way in front of everyone, off the lap of his father, he got extremely upset. Very, very upset. And he went to his mother Suniti, and she, it seems, was not perhaps right on the scene there, and explained what had happened, and said, I am going to show my father who's important around here. You want to treat me like that? I'll show you. I'll get a kingdom, not just bigger than yours. I'll get a kingdom bigger than your father's. I think it's Lord Brahma, isn't it? The father? Grandfather of Dhruva, yes, the father of Uttanapad. Shri Radha Radhanath Shri Giri Govardhan Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. Here, I'm going to get a kingdom bigger than my grandfather's. Means bigger than Lord Brahma. The kingdom of Lord Brahma, of course, is the whole universe. So how are you going to get a bigger kingdom than that? But that was his determination. And I'll just teach him a lesson. That was his idea. So he asked his mother, Suniti, what to do? How can I do this? And Suniti said, well, I don't know, but maybe you should ask God. Ask God. And Dhruva, a little boy, not understanding philosophy and things like that, he said, right, God, all right, where is he? Where do I find him? And Suniti said, well, I heard that when people want to find God, oftentimes they go to the forest. And Dhruva said, right, see you later. Padme Malenge. Yeah. Anyway, he just walked out, gone. That was it. Just gone into the forest. Actually, and Maharaj was discussing yesterday how he met Narada. And he asked Narada, this is what I want. Can you help me? And Narada, I want to find God. Can you help me? And Narada told him, well, God is everywhere. And, for a little boy like you, out here in the forest, it's the wrong place. God is everywhere. He's in the palace too. Why don't you just go back to the palace and find God in the palace? Because here, what you going to eat? You're going to eat leaves off the ground, or what you going to do? Go back to the palace. You can have nice, deep-fried Mahaprasad sabji with sweets, rasgulla, and so on, and find God also. And Dhruva said, listen, if you're not going to help me, go away. Just leave me. A bit abrupt when you're dealing with someone like Narada, but that was his determination. So anyway, Narada, being a preacher and being extremely intelligent as a preacher, he could see, I have to reach this boy and help this boy. Ultimately, in Krishna consciousness, I'm going to have to give him a process for becoming powerful and getting a big kingdom. Otherwise, he's just not going to take any notice of what I say. But I will add into it some Krishna consciousness. So in the end, he'll become a pure devotee. So he gave him a whole process, basically, of Ashtanga yoga, different exercises and breathing and so on. But he also gave him the mantra, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Very famous, important mantra. Of course, we chant it at the beginnings of our classes, and told him, you do all these exercises and chant the mantra, and your desire will be fulfilled. And sure enough, it's a bit of a long story Maharaj was explaining yesterday. The Lord appeared to him. And Dhruva had become so purified from chanting the mantra that when he saw the Lord, he realized vividly that this desire of mine for a big kingdom, it's useless. It's of no value. Now I've got you. I don't need a kingdom. So anyway, then he came home. And here he is now. He's coming home. And particularly here in this verse and in the purport, in the purport, Prabhupada brings out the point. It's a very, extremely important point, actually, through the example of Suniti. Suniti, who was the second wife and was really treated like how Dhruva got treated. Not treated very respectfully or nicely, and she's a Kshatriya woman, so she has the Kshatriya character, but she always kept cool. She always kept cool. Anyway, as is explained here, Prabhupada explains in the purport that after Dhruva left for the forest, Uttanapad, who's a great devotee actually, he's not just some materialistic person with all deeply ingrained envy and attitudes like that. He's a devotee, but unfortunately he had been influenced by Suruchi, so he had got into a mood of favoritism and sort of prejudice towards her. But when he found out Dhruva, having been pushed off his lap, Dhruva has left and just gone, then Uttanapad really, Prabhupada says, he was very afflicted. He got deep realization, I've just made a tragic mistake, and it seems I may have lost my son. Just lost him. He's gone off to the forest, and in the forest there are tigers and snakes and all other types of deadly creatures. And he's just a little 5-year-old child. What's he going to do? He's not going to be able to run away from the tigers and like that. So he'll probably be killed. I've lost my son. What have I done? And then Prabhupada explains he appreciated the good fortune of Suniti. particularly after he heard from Narada, because Narada came after he had met Dhruva in the forest and preached to him. And so Narada came with kind of positive news. And then Uttanapad realized, oh, this son of Suniti, my son by Suniti, actually is a great soul. He's really very special devotee yogi. So then he appreciated that Dhruva's very special, and Suniti, to have a son with the qualities of Dhruva, she is very special. She's very fortunate. And Suruchi, who was all puffed up and unpleasant towards Suniti, she was actually not so fortunate. So, but the point that Prabhupada focuses on is that when they all got news that Dhruva's on his way, he's going to arrive today back home, then everyone, of course, was just overjoyed, and particularly Suniti, the mother. So she's also rushing out on a palanquin, as was the way in the cultured families and like the higher level families, royalty and so on. The ladies would travel on palanquins. So she was being taken out on a palanquin, but then she saw, oh look, there's Suruchi, my co-wife, and she treated me so badly earlier on, but I don't want to be like that myself. So instead of, like being unpleasant back to Suruchi, returning the envy with some envy. You know what they say? What is it? A good defense is a good offense. Well, I'll make a good offense to her. She offended me. But Suniti, she was a more pure-hearted person. So she immediately invited her up, Suruchi, up on the palanquin with her, and Uttama, Suruchi's son. So that it's really very nice. The character of Suniti is very, very special in that particularly she's free from envy. Suruchi had shown envy earlier, taking that position of being the important wife, the chief wife, and really letting it be known, that's my position and you are lesser. But Suniti, her character was much higher. She was free from envy. And enviousness is one of the great disqualifications for Krishna consciousness, or just for ordinary material piety and goodness. But particularly for Krishna consciousness, enviousness is a great, great disqualification. Great disqualification. And you may be aware in Bhagavad Gita, in the 9th chapter, the very first verse, Lord Krishna makes the point that Arjuna, now I am going to give you the most confidential knowledge, which Krishna had not given so far. He had given knowledge. He had given a lot of knowledge, but not the most confidential knowledge. So he tells Arjuna, because you are not envious of me, I'm going to give you that knowledge. Yeah. Otherwise, he would have given it to someone else, one assumes, who was not envious. And Srila Baladev Vijayabhushan, in his purport to that verse, says that he gives, you could say, a definition of envy. He says that envy means to look at a person and search to find faults, even in the midst of many good qualities. But you're searching, where's the fault? Ah, got one. Like that. And when you feel you've picked up a few faults, even in the midst of many good qualities, but when you feel you've picked up some faults, then you feel, aha, now I understand this person. This person's just not of good character. And even, of course, Krishna in the 4th chapter, verse 3, having very briefly explained how the parampara deteriorated or just not exactly stopped, but certainly lost its potency drastically after he had instructed Vivasvan before. So Krishna tells Arjuna at that point that because you're a friend of mine, Sakha, because you're a friend of mine, because your attitude towards me is good, therefore I'll instruct you. That was chapter 4. And then he instructed. But then chapter 9, most confidential knowledge, because you're not envious of me. I'll give you this most confidential knowledge. So this envy, I was reading, there are many examples. Jad Bharat, if you know the story of Jad Bharat, Bharat Maharaj, in Srimad Bhagavatam, as Bharat Maharaj, he became attached to a deer, he fell down. Next life he was a deer, but then the 3rd life, he was Jad Bharat, born in a Brahmin family and very Brahminical and intelligent in Krishna consciousness. Although to avoid getting into bad company and basically practically avoiding getting into any company, he acted like he was insane. Yes, when his father, who was a Brahmin, was trying to train him to be a Brahmin, even though for Jad Bharat it was no problem. He could do all the things, chant all the mantras, all the different sort of rituals, how to do achman and do this and that and the other thing, but he acted like he was an idiot, basically. And, when it's time to offer achman, he'd drink the water from the achman cup, just drink it, and do things like that. So his father really tried to make him into a Brahmin. Jad Bharat went out of his way to apparently not become a Brahmin. So eventually his father just let him go. Just go. I can't do anything with you. And Jad Bharat was just moving around. And again, just like some sort of handicapped person with no one looking after him. And Rahugana, the king, had him taken in to help carry the palanquin. And Jad Bharat, anyway, he was dodging the ants and jumping over the ants so the palanquin would bounce and go this way and that. And Rahugana started treating him like a fool, but then Jad Bharat preached to him. And then Rahugana understood that actually he's a great soul. He's a great soul. So That's an interesting story also. Even Prabhupada, there's one purport in which Prabhupada says, if the atmosphere in society is pure enough, then even animals can become non-envious. Because animals are essentially fixed on the level of the senses and, beginning with eating and at certain times mating, because animals are they're situated on that level. That's the level on which their consciousness is functioning. So if another animal comes and interferes with their eating or their mating, they get very angry. And you've got a battle on your hands and that's enviousness. It's my food. It's not your food. And then they fight. That's enviousness. But Prabhupada explains, if the atmosphere is pure enough in Krishna consciousness, even animals may become non-envious. And also Prabhupada on a number of occasions through Srimad Bhagavatam here and there, Srila Prabhupada refers to the second verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, where the term paramo nirmatsaranam satam appears. And the way Prabhupada actually translates it in the verse, right there, where the verse appears in the Bhagavatam, it's the second verse, the nirmatsaram, Prabhupada translates as basically pure in heart. But when the term normally means matsara means envy, and nirmatsara means non-envious. And through the Bhagavatam here and there, Prabhupada quotes this and as being non-envious. Of course, being non-envious is an essential part of being saintly or being pure at heart. Yeah. And Prabhupada makes the point, one who is not free from the contamination of envy cannot advance in Krishna consciousness. Srimad Bhagavatam is meant for those who are completely nirmatsara, non-envious. In other words, one who's not free from the contamination of envy cannot advance in Krishna consciousness. Yes, so when a person is actually non-envious, then they don't desire ill fortune for anyone. And this is a very nice example. Suniti, she had reason, you could say, to be envious, to sort of pay back Suruchi. But she didn't do it. She was non-envious. She invited her onto the palanquin with her son. I was reading Srila Prabhupada, actually Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati makes the point that in one sense, a Brahman, if you want to understand what is a Brahman, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta says, a non-envious heart is the only identification of a Brahman. That heart is certainly the residence of love of God. Yeah. And of course, the point is, how could anyone become peaceful if they're envious? If you're envious, you're going to repeatedly encounter situations where your interests, material interests, are sort of imposed upon by somebody else's selfish interests. And if you're envious, when your interests become challenged and opposed, then you're not going to be able to tolerate it. And you'll be disturbed, at least disturbed. You may retaliate, something like this. So, unless a person becomes non-envious, they must be unpeaceful. They can't be peaceful. It's not possible for them to truly be peaceful. And we see in Mahabharata, there's the story of the Pandavas in exile. And one day, Duryodhana, who's just their arch enemy and who was just totally envious of them and just hated them, Duryodhana was attacked, if I remember correctly, by a Gandharva warrior. And Gandharvas are demigods, lesser demigods, but they're still demigods. So generally they're much more powerful than human beings. And this Gandharva somehow or other attacked Duryodhana, and Duryodhana was going to die. And the word got back to the Pandavas. This was happening near wherever they were staying in the forest. The word got back to the Pandavas. Looks like Duryodhana is finished. This Gandharva is going to kill him. And Bhima, not to say that Bhima's envious exactly, but anyway, Bhima basically said, good. That's nice. But Yudhisthira said, no, we've got to help him. And they did. And chased the Gandharva away. Because Yudhisthira was really non-envious. He was known as Ajata Shatru. Shatru meaning enemy. And Jata, Ajata, Jata meaning birth, Ajata. His enemy was never born. Actually, he had many enemies. He had so many enemies, headed by Duryodhana, who just wanted to first of all, cheat him, if possible, kill him, just get him out of the way. They hated him, so many of them. But he never considered any of them his enemies. He always had friendly, kindly attitudes towards them. And just like Suniti, is just such a wonderful characteristic of a devotee, to be non-envious. We see, Prabhupada makes the point on a number of occasions, talking about envy and being non-envious. Prabhupada makes the point that if your god brother or god sister is progressing more than you, advancing in Krishna consciousness, which, can be quite perceivable if someone's really doing nicely and really blissful and doing very good service and very nice attitudes and so on like that, then you can see this devotee is doing very well and quite possibly better than you. Prabhupada says we should celebrate that. We should be very happy for that devotee. And Prabhupada actually said about book distribution that if someone is distributing more books than you, then be very happy and pray to Krishna, please empower me like you're empowering this devotee, so I can do service like this devotee is doing. This sort of attitude is very conducive, extremely, just simply conducive to making progress in Krishna consciousness. Or, the opposite, like I remember during one marathon, we were doing better than one devotee. And we went out for a little japa walk just before breakfast time. We got back, and the other devotee had not come with us. He had already gone out to distribute books, and you know what he did? He'd locked the van and taken the keys. So we couldn't get in to do anything, including to get books to go out and distribute, and possibly distribute more than him. That's not really the right attitude. Or when one of the devotees is speaking to someone to get them to take a book, then you go in and tell the person, don't take a book. Don't take a book from him. I have seen these things happen. So it's not the right thing. I mean, there's definitely some element of enviousness there. Even we read how Srimati Radharani, everyone knows she is the topmost, and she is the one who pleases Krishna the most, by far, so much more, and she knows it too. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes how Srimati Radharani says that actually I know that my love for Krishna is like Mount Meru, and the love of these other gopis is like a mustard seed. She knows, but still she pushes other gopis forward. Go on, you go meet Krishna. You go meet Krishna. You're better than me. You're better than me. In her humility, she pushes them forward. You can please Krishna more than me, so you should meet him, not me. So of course, that's the most elevated level of pure devotional service and non-envious, but we, as aspiring devotees, we should really try and grasp the significance of being or becoming non-envious and really try to cultivate it. Of course, it will come step by step if we really work on our chanting and the quality of our Krishna consciousness and just our absorption in Krishna consciousness. But we can also make some effort to try to be like that. And Krishna will appreciate, Krishna will be merciful, Radharani will be merciful. Yes, and we'll make progress, and we'll be very happy. We'll be increasingly happy, happier than we've ever been, and happier than we ever conceived we could be, if we really cultivate Krishna consciousness in that way. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So, devotees, any comment or question? Maharaj, some correction, enlightenment, help? Very important point which I didn't teach you. It's Prabhupada.
Anyone who says in spiritual life that without we knowing that nothing has comes up, and we get the false ego, then it gets stuck. One should be constantly on guard for this.
Yes. Thank you. Good instruction. Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, we sometimes hear that envy or jealousy are quite similar, that it's this first seed of sin that sets in for a conditioned soul, or one who's becoming conditioned. Do you have some reference for that in terms of what Prabhupada said in that regards?
Of it being like the root.
Yeah, exactly. The root, the seed, where it all starts from.
A reference, like a specific reference. Well,
Something comes to your mind on that.
Okay. I mean, I don't think offhand I could give, like canto this or chapter that or something. But it's a fact that Prabhupada said it. Yes. Can you give us a reference?
No, I can't. I can only give a reference from the script.
Oh, okay.
Just in the age of Kali, the script. Okay. All right. What is the root of all sinful activities? From the Chitta and Shikshamrita. Being able to tolerate others' progress is called envy. This is the root of all sinful activities.
Wow, what's the reference?
That is from the Krishna Samhita chapter.
Oh,
No, this is from the Chitta Shikshamrita, just over the
right.
Shikshamrita 2.5, and then I guess that's it.
I'm looking at the same thing, actually. My computer is omniscient, so I have to check it.
Yeah, and we have some dramas in ISKCON that are kind of classics. One is the Age of Kali, and the whole concept of Kali coming into the scene with his cohorts, lust, anger, greed, madness, envy, and illusion.
Right.
That was presented by a famous Bengali playwright. I just can't remember his name right now. But he was kind of a debauchee, a drunkard, but the Gaudiya Vaishnavas accepted him. He was so good at putting assembling dramas. So in that particular presentation, he does speak about envy being the root, the cause of all the other sins. Personifications of lust and anger and greed. It starts with envy, jealousy. So I was just wondering if Prabhupada ever referenced it.
Well, yes, I can, if just give me a sec, and I will read, I was just reading this morning, the part of the purport of chapter 9, verse 1, where Srila Prabhupada, a whole paragraph, he talks about envy. It's the last paragraph of the purport of chapter 9, verse 1. So Prabhupada says, it's a perspective on it, shall we say. It's not exactly addressing the point, completely, but Prabhupada says the Sanskrit word anasuyave in this verse is also very significant. Generally, the commentators, even if they're highly scholarly, are all envious of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even the most erudite scholars write on Bhagavad Gita very inaccurately. Because they're envious of Krishna, their commentaries are useless. The commentaries given by devotees of the Lord are bona fide. No one can explain Bhagavad Gita or give perfect knowledge of Krishna if he is envious. One who criticizes the character of Krishna without knowing him is a fool. So such commentaries should be very carefully avoided. For one who understands that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the pure and transcendental personality, these chapters will be very beneficial. So, I did a very quick search and I found Bhaktivinoda Thakur, a little bit Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, talking about the root, that sense. But not Srila Prabhupada. It would take, a more in-depth search should be done. And it's not, I would expect we'd find something.
Thank you, Maharaj. I'm not a Christian scholar in any way with some theologians in the room here, but I believe that's their take on why, say, Adam and Eve fell. There was some jealousy.
Right.
I think it's a Christian concept as well. I'm just wondering, where is our source?
Okay. Well, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's got something. I know there was an incident with Satsvarup Maharaj speaking to Prabhupada, and he asked Prabhupada, I mention it in a seminar I do, I've done a number of times, and he asks Prabhupada basically, why is it, if Krishna's all attractive, why is it so difficult for us to become attracted to him? That's the question. And Prabhupada fastens seatbelts, everyone. He's not sitting down, it might be best to sit down. But anyway, Prabhupada says, so this is the question, why is it so difficult to become attracted when he's all attractive? Prabhupada's answer was, because you hate Krishna. Yeah. Anyway, just an interesting little point. Is that okay for the time being, or would you like to add? Okay. Anyone else? Any comment, question? Just a sec.
So there's a question from another Mai Krishna Prabhu, who sent it. He quotes a verse 4:20:16. My dear King, I am very captivated by your elevated qualities and excellent behavior, and thus I am very favorably inclined toward you.
Right.
You may therefore ask from me any benediction you like. One who does not possess elevated qualities and behavior cannot possibly achieve my favor simply by performance of sacrifice, severe austerities, or mystic yoga. But I always remain equiposed in the heart of one who is also equipoised in all circumstances. And then the question is, Dhruva Maharaj became extremely angry and was therefore not equipoised. He performed severe austerities for material gain, yet he still achieved the favor of the Lord. Please explain this apparent contradiction.
Yeah, it's not exactly a contradiction because he practiced Krishna consciousness. He was doing basically Ashtanga yoga or something related to it because Narada felt, if I don't give him a process like this, then he will not accept anything from me. A process by which I can fulfill my desire. So Narada felt he had to give it to him as a strategy, but actually what he was really giving was Krishna consciousness through chanting Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And in the end, when everything matured, that Krishna consciousness was what was there. And so the Lord said, okay, here I am. I hear you want a kingdom. Okay, so I'll give you a kingdom. But Dhruva said, no, I don't want it now. I thought it was valuable like a big pile of jewels. But now I see it's just like a big pile of broken colored glass. Yeah, so he became purified. Yes, Maharaj.
I just had a question. Was glass invented at that time?
Say that again?
Was glass invented
Oh.
at that time? Because my understanding is glass, it's a translation thing. But, just for fun.
For fun.
The Italians, I believe they created glass. They were expert glass makers, glass blowers. And if you blow glass and it doesn't quite work, the term was fiasco.
Oh,
Everybody's heard that term, fiasco.
yes.
But I'm just wondering how the translation came, broken glass. Was glass around at that time?
Well, we should have a look at the translation. As I understand, the actual word glass is used. But I don't think we should underestimate people back in Satya Yuga, particularly the early stages of it. This is third generation Satya Yuga. So, just like the knowledge coming in Parampara got lost in the meantime, but then it became established again. So, the skill of glass making, who knows, maybe it became lost. And then the Italians, the Itais, they reestablished it. It wouldn't, I don't know. I don't think anyone does, but I wouldn't be surprised. How's this? They used to make cold things, drinks and foods. They made them. They didn't have fridges. I don't know how they did it, but they did it. Because those things are standard parts of the cuisine, certain cold things. Yeah.
Anyways, we appreciate glass. Otherwise, we wouldn't have such a nice room.
That's right.
Only the birds don't get it. They don't understand glass.
Not well enough, yeah.
Especially what they call the body sort of thing.
Okay. Any other comment or question? Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yes. Right. Oh, okay. Okay.
Thank you. Very wonderful class. This class contains very, very important elements. Because Maharaj, what I meant is that I would say these elements are a very root cause of the failure for any given situation. Because these two elements stalls the progress or the growth of any organization. Anything that nice that people want to start, but if there's such elements within, it will be very difficult. Now, here's a question, Maharaj. In some instances, you say that maybe a particular leader or a person within the organization, he's so good, he's very talented, but he's got weaknesses there and there, and maybe you want to bring them up instead of
Maybe once too?
to bring that up to that particular person.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, more or less in some sort of constructive criticism.
Right, right.
Sometimes people get offended from those
Right.
criticisms.
Sure.
How do we overcome that?
How do we overcome that? Or how do we deal with that? The thing is, in principle, dealing with fault, and here, if we talk about individuals, dealing with fault is one of the most sensitive things which has to be dealt with very carefully, because people are very sensitive. And I mean, for that matter, they're also prone to become envious. If you sort of tell them, you're doing the wrong thing, why are you doing that? Then some of them, because they're not pure souls, their envy will actually be stimulated. Why? How? You don't talk to me like that. So dealing with fault is one of the most sensitive parts of Krishna consciousness. And if you feel, unless it's an emergency, like someone's going to drive off the cliff in 10 seconds, and you've got to scream at them, "Stop! What are you doing?" Something like that. It's an emergency. But otherwise, under normal circumstances, if there's some fault with someone, it's always a very good idea to think, how should this be addressed? Maybe you can just walk up and say, don't do it that way, do it this way. But in certain situations, you won't be able to do that, because, what you're talking about will happen. So then it may be best, it's sometimes or often best, to involve someone more senior, or someone closer who can talk to the person. But anyway, the bottom line, the basic point is, dealing with fault has to be done very carefully, otherwise you'll make things worse, or just have a different problem on your hands. Is that okay? Okay. Hare Krishna.
I was just appreciating the point you made that when the society is peaceful, then it could have a positive effect on the animals.
Right.
And I thought of the pastimes of Mahaprabhu when he was in the Jarikanda forest, that the animals responded positively because of the atmosphere that he created himself.
Right.
I was just appreciating that.
Good. Thank you. That's a good one. Thank you for that.
There's a question which was asked, which was spoken by Jiras to develop.
Tell us.
He was asking how to deal with his envy. The Lord responded by saying, "Can you find any reason to be envious?" And then Jiras said, "Ha." And then Lord said that the envy should be not directed towards devotees, but to non-devotees. But the question I wanted to ask was that you're speaking about envy. So instead of kind of trying to work with it intentionally or trying to see how we can overcome it, I wanted to know what's, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur's prescription, which demon represents this envy. What the description he gives also how by wearing the pastime, one is eradicating that particular avatar.
Well, okay. Kaliya, actually Agasura also, but Kaliya particularly represents envy. And and Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that just by hearing the pastime of the defeat of Kaliya, that will help to remove envy from the heart. Just by, because it's focusing on a specific manifestation of envy and towards Krishna. So there's a particular potency just in the narration for cleansing envy from the heart. And the same with all the other demons and the anathas they represent. He makes that point. that the transcendental vibration of the narration of the particular pastimes has some sort of built-in potency to help eradicate and anatha. In that case, with kaliya, to eliminate envy. Let me close. I think we should close by mentioning how in Nectar of Devotion there is a description of transcendental envy. Yes, it's interesting. Srimati Radharani is looking at the face of one gopi who just had that other gopi just had her face decorated with gopi dots and, all that sort of thing by Krishna personally. And she's looking at this gopi's face, and Krishna, the decoration has been done so incredibly perfectly by Krishna himself. And Radharani says to that gopi, she says, "You're not very beautiful." And she says, "Because I can tell you're not so beautiful because Krishna was right by your face, doing the decoration. And because you're not very beautiful, he wasn't disturbed by your beauty. So there are no smudges or, things going off that way. It's all just perfect. So you're not very beautiful." Transcendental envy. But what it means is that Krishna wasn't pleased so much. Yeah, because when he gets a bit jittery and starts making mistakes, it's because he's just overwhelmed. He's so pleased by the love that he just loses control. And therefore, instead of nice detailed circles and whatnot, it's like splodge or something like that. Hare Krishna. It's in Nectar of Devotion. Srila Prabhupada ki.